So I want to start really by thanking you as the members for voting me in to become your president for this year. And I hope that I'll be able to really add some value to your agenda because I'm here to represent you and to work with the Board of Trustees to drive the agenda forward to the next stage. And I want to start by thanking David Murphy, our outgoing president, but also really welcoming his mentoring and advice and support that he's given me all through this year and will continue to provide in his vice president role. I also want to thank the senior leaders in the BPS. They're very often the unsung heroes of the BPS, in that whenever you've got a problem, it's easy to phone up and complain about that or to say something about that. But what struck me about the senior leaders and all of the BPS staff is the complete dedication that people have to serving the BPS and serving psychology. So thank you to all of them. So I want to take you through a number of things this morning. First of all, I want to just give you a little bit of background to me. We've talked a lot about COVID-19 yesterday, but I want to pick up on some of the lessons and impacts. I want to discuss what we mean by the new normal and what the impact of that would be, and some key milestones that we've done in the last year and how we might take that forward. I want to talk about how we might build psychological capability and create the BPS of the future. And of course, within that, there are real challenges ahead. So the focus has to be on how we overcome those challenges as well. So a little bit about me, first of all, I'm sure some of you already know that, and Claudia just said, that I am the first person from the Division of Occupational Psychology for some time. And, you know, as an occupational psychologist, the wonderful thing is that you really get to meet lots and lots of different people from very different backgrounds. So I have worked with the NHS, and I've worked with a number of people, both surgeons looking at recruitment and assessment in that field, but I've also worked with medical suppliers, I've worked with banks, I've done some work as well with a number of international companies, including companies like L'Oreal, which really suited me, thinking about the makeup and hair and all those kinds of things as well. So a really diverse set of organisations. And currently I spend quite a bit of time with professional services businesses, where people are really looking at how they can service their clients better. And one of the things that really comes up time and time again is the importance of working together and really building teams that are effective, and also thinking about change in terms of really creating the right kind of culture, the right sense of purpose in the world of work. So it's actually very exciting for me because one day I'll be in one type of environment and in another type of environment. You'll see from some of the pictures that are up here, I have done very diverse things like coaching general managers in China, hence the picture of Shanghai there, working with people from India, in IT companies, working with engineering companies. So really getting a very different sense of what the world of work really looks like. I also really focus on developing talent and developing young people, and I regularly lecture at King's College London at the Institute of Psychology and Psychiatry, but I also really believe that it's important to focus on developing people and enhancing their capability. And I think that's really what we are all about when we think about psychology, isn't it? The great thing about studying psychology is that there's always new research, there's always new data, and there's always new ways in which we can apply that and move it forward. So I think that we as a profession have a huge amount to offer to the world of work, to the world of clinical practice, to the world of education, to the world of education, and so on. So it's both research and practice. And we really are in some ways a wide church, but we have a common thread, and that is that we're about individuals and enhancing those individuals and their happiness in life, their work life, their home life, and the capability to function, including their mental health. And we are also about bringing people together and building teams that work effectively and enhance the effectiveness overall of the outcomes, whether that's in a clinical setting, whether that's in an occupational setting or an educational setting. And I'm very lucky to be involved in occupational psychology with organisations. And I'm sure that you've seen lots of changes in organisations. Organisations like Netflix didn't exist long ago. Facebook, all of the things when Alice Thompson talked about the changes in the next 20 years. Actually, a lot of the businesses that we deal with today were not around earlier in the beginning of the 21st century. In addition, I think it's all about really making sure that we add value in whatever context we are involved in. So that's either at the individual level, at the team level, or the organisational level. So I'm going to move on now to talk a little bit about COVID-19 and the impact. And I really was heartened yesterday to hear from all of the colleagues and the psychologists that had been involved and volunteered to get involved in supporting others through COVID-19. And it really emphasised for me the importance of the data and the science, and the importance also that we as individuals really react in very, very different ways. So I think we go through some very different stages. I mean, some people have likened this to a grief cycle, haven't they? You know, if you think about it, you start off with denial, this COVID thing really happening, and we go through all the steps towards acceptance. It was very interesting also to hear a little bit more about resilience and the focus that it's not just on the individual to build their resilience and to therefore cope with issues that might occur, but put in place mechanisms that really support and enhance people's resilience. And I'm working at the moment with an engineering company looking at organisational resilience. How can you really energise everyone and therefore improve the mental well-being of people in work? Technology is also a critical factor, and we really want to think about what that's going to change in terms of the way that we operate as individuals. Even this technology that we're using this morning is very different from the technology that we would have used 5 years ago. And it will be very different again. Alice Thompson's focus on the virtual reality is one example of how that might change in the future. And I think as we come out of COVID-19, we have to think about how we are going to create the new normal. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But before I do that, I thought you'd be interested in just having some numbers. I love the fact that psychology is really about data and about evidence. So my source for this is the Sunday Times, and the Sunday Times in June 21st put together some information about what we were like as a nation during lockdown. And I've just shared some of those here with you, and I think you'll not be surprised at some of those. If you want, there is more in the article than I've got here. So if you want to refer to that article, please do look back at it. The first thing that we note is that the environment is actually benefited from lockdown. It's estimated that 3,425 lives have been saved because of lack of air pollution. Well, of course, that has raised questions about what we do about climate change now and how we move that forward. There's also been a fall in the use of electricity, a 10% fall in the use of electricity. So from an environmental point of view, perhaps some things have got better during lockdown. Certainly people have said that they can hear the birds singing in the gardens. I certainly find that they can wake me up at 4 o'clock in the morning, so I can definitely see that. But what's happened positively for the environment has been very negative in terms of our economic output and economic situation. And as many of the speakers yesterday pointed out, this has not been an equal thing, it's been unequal. So there's been a 20% fall in GDP in April, 18.1% fall in retail sales, 9.1 million people on furlough, many more people unemployed. So we all know what those economic impacts are. In addition, we're all doing very different things. So we're reading more. There's an increase in the share price of Zoom because we're all talking to each other in this mechanism. There's been many changes in the way that we use our time, including doing more puzzles, including more baking, and also, of course, including the amount of alcohol that people are purchasing. Travel, of course, has changed. We're not traveling, there's less petrol use, but we've got on our bike and moved outwards. In addition, we are buying sports equipment. I was talking with a sports psychologist recently who was saying we've spent years trying to get people involved in sport, and the minute we get COVID-19, everyone's interested in keeping fit. So that's probably an upside of some of this. And even in certain parts of London, 500% increase in purchase of toilet rolls, and we all know the rationale behind that. There's a slightly darker side in terms of some of the relationship side, and also some positives there too. People are talking to each other more, and that's good. And some crime is down, but there is an increase in drug offences, and there is an increase in divorce rates. But all of this together tells us that our world has changed because of external factors. But it's also got us to think more about what we like and what we want to do. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the lessons. The first thing I would say is that the world is uncertain. Even though we think we planned everything, it won't go to plan. So we should expect the unexpected. My second thought is that we are social beings, that the small things matter, that relationships are key. And that sense of community, that local community that some of my colleagues yesterday talked about, is really essential. One of the great benefits of COVID-19 has been the cross-divisional working in terms of people working together on publications, webinars, communications, and much more. And I think also people are highlighting the importance of understanding emotions, understanding perceptions, understanding reactions, and that has started a dialogue which is very useful for all of us. And I think also that psychology has come to the fore. I mean, we are in the press all the time as a profession, and people are interested in what psychology has to say. So I think some of the lessons relate to the way we organise and structure ourselves as a psychology society, and where we put our emphasis as a psychological society. And I think we need to be thinking about what we have in common rather than what differentiates us. We have over 154 networks, but the world is changing all the time, and we need to be thinking about having networks that are fit for today's environment, like cyber psychology, and focus our time on the things that truly matter in terms of driving the agenda forward. So I think the new normal for us involves some of these things. Firstly, there is a real opportunity for collaboration, and I think that's both internal and external. I'm already in conversations with SARB and with the BPS team, thinking about how we can collaborate internally more across departments, and how we can collaborate with the Board of Trustees and with the senior leaders to really make it as effective as possible. As David yesterday mentioned, shared leadership is a model for the future. We need to think about different ways of leading, and that involves being much more compassionate and understanding of the point of view of the other. And that's whoever the other is. So Saab talked about the importance of Black Lives Matters and the impact on the BAME community. We have to be aware of difference and really embrace and include difference rather than exclude it. And so it's less about controlling and more about sharing and moving things forward. And it's about how we focus and use our energy. And I think there are some lessons that we can learn, and I think we need to be much more open and adaptable in learning those lessons. So one of the things I'm really keen on in the BPS is reviewing, you know, thinking back, what did we do well? What did we do less well? What can we change here? And that's about getting the basics right. It's about making sure that you're responded to in the right way at the right time. And also ensuring standards and accreditation so that we're doing the right things at the right time. I'm not going to go through this in much detail because Saab's already covered much of this, but what I would say is that there is a major change program going on, and you may not see all of the results of that just yet, because some of it is infrastructure, and of course infrastructure doesn't actually show externally immediately, but a long-term impact. I do welcome Carol McGuinness as the chair of the membership board, and really looking forward to that member journey driving to the next level. And there has been considerable investment in that this year, and we want to move that forward. And we are doing a strategy review, so we will be asking you for comments and views, and also thinking there about you know, how we communicate with you and how we focus our attention in terms of policy. We will be looking further at poverty to flourishing as the main element this year. But I think one of the critical things there is the diversity and inclusion, not just a task force, but having a systemic view, a review of what we're doing. And that is essential. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes now just talking about the member journey work. And there are really three key things that have come out. This is the work from Social Kinetic and BPS combined. That we're saying as members, you want us to be a bold, progressive voice of the profession. You want us to support your journey, your status and your credibility as professionals. And we want to provide a connected, a community-based approach to the way the society works. This is a slide from Social Kinetic and the member journey work, but I think it divides very neatly into the importance of what we can do as a society for members and for each of us, and then what we can do for the discipline as a whole. And there's clearly a balance in terms of that supporting side and that advocating side. And one of the key things over the coming months is to review exactly what that balance is and how we can support it. So I was thinking about this from a psychologist's perspective, which you won't be surprised at, I looked at some of the literature, and I was particularly taken with this positive psychology work in terms of positive psychological capital. I'm particularly thinking about Marty Sigerman's work, and then obviously the additional work with Luthans and others. And so this isn't their model, but I think we can apply their model, because their model talks about hope, optimism, you know, self-efficacy, about actually engaging with people. And I think that really is the essence of what we need at the moment as a society. So I've produced instead sort of my vision of the 7 pillars of how that might work. First of all, that bold vision, having a really clear sense of purpose, about inspiring, creating a vision that will take things to a different level so that we really have a BPS that we are all proud of. I want us to spend quite a bit of time this year thinking about culture and values, and thinking about how can we ensure that everyone belongs to society, not just people who are current members, but also new members and past members, because we've heard lots from past members saying, I'd really love to rejoin the BPS, but it's not really for me at the moment. So let's make it that way. Saab talked about the importance of CPD, but there is a whole host of things that we really need to be doing in terms of developing talent and ensuring others are successful. And careers in psychology are quite difficult in many ways. How do you make those decisions and how do you drive it forward? And I really do feel for people as they try and make those choices, but we need to make that easier and provide flexibility for people so that they can manage their career in an effective way while still retaining those professional standards. And I think that link between research and applied psychology and really taking knowledge together is absolutely essential. So I put together a little model of how this might work, and in the centre of my model there is the creating the vision, and my vision is around building psychological capital. Now, I don't really have enough time today to go through this model in a lot of detail, but you'll see that there are a number of strands in here, and then within each of the strands we need to be thinking about what should we be doing, what are our quick wins, what are our priorities, and how are we going to make that happen. I want to make clear that there are some things which are about you as members, so it's about the member experience, it's about getting the basics right, it's about having networks that are fit for purpose, and also about careers and career paths and the journey that you have. But it's also about getting that link between research and practice right, having open access to information. The psychologist does a great job, and thank you, John Sutton, for some, that putting information out there in the psychologist, the research digest, access to things, which enhances the knowledge and credibility of all of our professionals. In addition, we need to be thinking about the courses we accredit and the new things coming online in terms of cyber psychology, neuroscience, and the like. And we need to have different psychological communities that tie together. Of particular importance is diversity and inclusion. As Claudia said, I have a bit of a background in terms of that. I started my work in diversity and inclusion in Northern Ireland in the days before the peace agreement, so that shows how old I am. And I've worked on an international basis with the International Applied Psychology Group, looking at the diversity and inclusion, particularly with women. But I do not underestimate the importance of Black Lives Matter and the impact of race issues and the potential to change that. And I really welcome the words that Saab said today in relation to that. We need to be inward focused to get the right things happening in the BPS, but we also need to be outward focused to ensure that we are a global organisation. So all of the networking and support against that is important. We need the right technology to drive those initiatives forward. But one of the things that I think is really key is you, the volunteers. And we have over 2,000 volunteers, and the number is growing. And I put a little symbol there of a diamond, because to me, you are the diamond. You are the people who are making the society drive forward. And you are the people with the expertise and the knowledge to enable it. So we are truly a member-centric organisation in that respect. I would like us to build on that and really move it forward. We also need to be thinking about how we shape policy, how we think about the workforce for the future, and particularly thinking about innovation and the new categories of psychological workforce that are coming on board. I've gone through that relatively quickly, but I'm happy to pick up separately on any issues that people may have. So when we think about building our psychological community, we really need to be taking the essence of psychology, thinking about the macro and micro changes, and then making sure that we are capturing all of those issues in our priorities and in our strategy. Furthermore, we know that the number of students are increasing, and psychology is one of the top A-levels that people want to study, and it really enables us to understand our fellow man much, much better. So that research component, supporting research, supporting that dynamic, and connecting with other parts. We talked about a chief psychologist yesterday, and whether it's a behavioural scientist or not. Well, we need to be working with people from other disciplines to drive that forward, and other networks. And to do that, we need to be thinking about robust science and research. We need to think about collaboration, but important to that is getting our priorities right and having a genuine support for members in a culture that is of trust and openness and transparency. I did mentioned already, I think, some of the challenges, but for me, one of the critical ones is about getting that common sense of purpose. Far too long, we have worked in divisional tribes or sections or branches. Our identity hasn't been the BPS as such, it's been our subdivision. I'm pretty much that, you know, the DOP, I was chair of the division, and I absolutely feel connected to that part of the society. But I think we can be broader than that. We need to have clarity on our mission, our vision, and our strategic priorities. But I think the critical thing is focusing on what really matters so that we can add value to psychology and to us as society members. I'm going to finish with a few quotes because I'm very conscious that we're getting near the end of the time here. And the first one is from the feminist and activist Grace Boggs, who says, "You cannot change any society unless you take responsibility for it, unless you see yourself as belonging to it and responsible for changing it." So please don't just tell us what the problems are, help us to get those solutions in place. The second quote is from the author Howard Zinn, and he says, you don't have to engage in grand heroic acts to participate in change. Small acts, when multiplied by millions of people, can transform the world. And we know that when we start to look at things like climate change and sustainability. And I think small acts are what does make the big difference. Little and often makes it work. And the last quote I think is important, and it comes from the psychoanalyst Erik Erikson. And I think it's important because it really epitomizes what we feel about COVID, or what I feel about COVID. And that says that life doesn't make sense without interdependence. We each need each other, and the sooner we learn that, the better for us all. And I genuinely feel that is the case. Thank you very much.